Good morning. Oops. My name is Allison Kaplan. I'm Director of Education here at the National First Ladies Library in Canton, Ohio. I want to thank you all for joining us today. Before we get started, I want to tell you about some upcoming programs here at the National First Ladies Library. And we had a quick rotating PowerPoint that advertised some of them, including our 3 exhibitions that are up and on view at the Education Center here at First Ladies right now. One is about women on First Ladies on the Campaign Trail. Another is about women breaking the glass ceiling and running for president. And another is about women in Ohio and suffrage. So all are clearly very relevant, and we welcome you to come and see us and our partners with NPS. Here in Canton. If you can't reach us, you can always connect with us through our programs here at First Ladies. And please check us out on Facebook or Eventbrite if you're interested for registering. We have a children's program that runs every month that is STEAM inspired. It's a special kit that you can order online through Eventbrite. And each one is inspired by a different woman in a STEM career. This month, we're very excited because the kit involves a First Lady. It is inspired by the Carters and their work related to water and clean water around the world. So you can order that online for $15 this month, and we will send the box with an experiment and activity to your door. If you're joining us today for Legacy Lecture, you may be interested in our talk for next month. March 3rd, we will be hosting Sherry Hall from the Harding Presidential Site. She will be talking about their upcoming opening of their space along with Florence Harding, the First Lady. February 9th, we host a film series with our pals at the Stark Library, and we give you a chance to pre-screen a film, a documentary that involves women online through their library service, and then join us for a discussion. So we do a little Q&A with someone who is local or pertinent to the film's topics. So next month, this month, February 9th, next week, we are hosting She Makes Comics, and we are really excited to be in conversation with Sequoia Bostic, who is from Cleveland, and she'll be talking about the film as well as her own comic endeavors. So that should be fun. If you're a big fan of Michelle Gullion here, who's giving our talk today, you'll want to join us again on February 18th for a talk. Our curator's talk is about Angelica Van Buren. So that should be really great. And that gives you behind the scenes info on an object in our collection. And we always have a really good time. 2 other upcoming programs. First Ladies Night, March 22nd is our next First Ladies Night, and we're super excited because we're going to be hosting a White House calligrapher. So Pat Blair, who served under 3 different administrations, will be with us talking about her experiences at the White House and leading a calligraphy demonstration. So we're super pumped about that. We also have a book club coming up at the end of the month. That's a discussion where you can hop on Zoom and talk to us. This one is fiction First Lady inspired, related to Mrs. Grant. Madame Jewel and Mrs. Grant is the book, and we hope that you can join us. So without further ado, I'm very excited to turn things over to Michelle Gullion, the Director of Collections and Research here at the National First Ladies Library, so we can hear more about the McKinley wedding. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to mention, just housekeeping-wise, if you have questions for Michelle, you can put them in the Q&A or the chat, and we will be happy to address them at the close of her talk. And the same goes for anyone who is watching us on Facebook today. So if you have a question, please type it out and we will throw it at Michelle when she's done. So thank you so much, Michelle, and I will turn things over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Allison. You're so sweet. And Allison's just got some amazing things coming up, so don't miss it. I can't wait for she does comics. I can't wait for that one. I want to, before I get started with my presentation, I want to thank some people. I want to thank our partners on this venture that we're doing. There's going to be, hopefully, keeping our fingers crossed, an upcoming celebration of the 150th wedding anniversary of the McKinleys. And that's going to be a reenactment, music that were period music that was used, the type of vows they would have took. Should be really fun. We'll have our own exhibit up that will go into some more explanation about some of the things that I'm going to touch on today. And I also would be remiss if I didn't thank the McKinley Presidential Library and Museum. They are working so diligently, Mark Holland and his crew, on getting photos for this exhibit. And so you're going to be seeing some of the photos that they've been able to find, and they're still working on some. So we're really excited to be working with all these wonderful people here in Canton, Ohio, on this very exciting project of celebrating Ida and William McKinley's 150th wedding anniversary. Let's get started on with the PowerPoint. This is, by the way, an early, we kind of look at this as an early Happy Valentine's Day present to all of you, and we hope you enjoy this really fun look back at the wedding of the McKinley and Saxtons. All right, let's see. How do I get this to go forward? It was working. There we go. The wedding took place during what one historian has called Old Canton. To understand its significance, not just from the perspective of a future president and first lady of the United States, we need to imagine Canton from an earlier time. Canton was founded in 1805 by Bezaleel Wells. It was incorporated into a village in 1822 and finally became a city in 1838. As the historian William T. Coons wrote in Memories of Old Canton, a big event meant that citizens knew when the church bells rang on any day but Sunday, there was a fire, and soon the volunteer firefighters would be racing to it with the horse-drawn water pump. And then there was the frenzied, noisy commotion of a runaway horse that would send people sprinting down the street to see the damage that was caused to horse, buggy, or rider. The weekly newspaper, The Repository, alerted people to concerts and lectures coming to town because there was no electricity or radio stations to do the same. There were the special events that everyone looked forward to, such as when the circus arrived by train. The animals and performers paraded through the streets and then put on shows under the big top tent. Another happy occasion was a wedding, and by the fall of 1870, none was more talked about than the nuptials of Miss Ida Saxton and Major William McKinley. We're going to start with Ida McKinley, who is native to Canton. She was born, Ida Saxton, on June 8th, 1847. She was the oldest child of James and Catherine DeWalt Saxton, followed by sister Mary in 1848 and brother George in 1850. Ida's father, James, owned several local successful businesses and properties in Canton before founding the Stark County Lot Bank in 1854. The Saxtons were one of the oldest and wealthiest families in Canton. This is Ida's grandfather, John Saxton, who was one of the early founders of Canton. He was born in Huntington, Pennsylvania, and he came to Canton in 1815 when the town was just 10 years old. John Saxton set up a printing press and soon became the owner of the weekly newspaper, The Repository. He was a well-respected and wealthy resident of Canton. In the late 1820s, John Saxton joined the First Presbyterian Church on the corner of Tuscaroras and Plum Street, which is today McKinley Avenue. His wife, Margaret, and their 8 children also worshiped there. The Saxton family was instrumental in helping expand the growth of the the church's congregation. Ida went to school at Canton Union. She had the good fortune to be a young student under the tutelage of Betsy Mix Cowles, a leader in the abolitionist and women's suffrage movements. James Saxton, who served for a time on the Canton School Board, was impressed with Cowles' education and independence and shared her belief in the abolition of slavery and support of women's rights. In 1862, James and Catherine Saxton sent 15-year-old Ida to attend boarding school in Delhi, New York, for further instruction under Cowles' guidance. James wrote to Cowles that he wanted Ida to have a well-rounded education, especially in finance, where she showed interest and talent. Ida continued her education at the Sanford School in Cleveland, Ohio, for 2 years, and then from 1865 until 1868, she and her sister Mary went to Media, Pennsylvania, to attend the Brook Hall Female Seminary. By all accounts, Ida received an excellent education, and it served her well throughout her life. Returning to Canton fresh from her studies, Ida went to work as a clerk at Stark County Bank, which was owned by her father. Now, in 1968, a woman working in a bank was quite unusual for Victorian society norms and met with eyebrow raising and gossip. Ida had the confidence and support to proceed independently. Yes, there were some amusing yarns told of James' annoyance at fending off a number of young men who liked to linger near his lovely 21-year-old daughter, who was also known as the Belle of Canton. At the same time, Ida taught Sunday school for the First Presbyterian Church. However, she taught her students across the street in an old school building, which is now Timpkin Senior High School. The year before, in 1867, the cornerstone was laid for the construction of a new stone church upon the property. Ida's father, James, was on the building committee, and the congregation held fairs to help raise funds. Ida was actively involved in helping fundraise for the church's construction. In this small newspaper article, we see that Miss Ida Saxton got the beautiful egg caster voted for. Ida took a 6-month leave from her bank job in June of 1869, when she and her sister Mary joined a small local group for a grand tour of Europe. During the 19th century, a grand tour was considered the way for wealthy young men to properly complete their education. It was much more unusual for women to receive the same opportunity. From June until December, the party of 4 traveled to 10 different European countries, and Ida carefully watched the financial spending during the trip. The sisters' letters to their parents tell of their experiences and the many memorable sights and people they met along the way. While Ida was in Europe, a gentleman she was quite fond of, John Wright, unexpectedly passed away in Canton. When she resumed her duties as at the bank and also teaching Sunday school. She did this in January of 1870. And who should she meet but Major William McKinley, who caught her fancy. William McKinley had arrived in Canton in 1867. He was born on January 29th, 1843 in Niles, Ohio, and grew up in Poland with his 7 siblings. He was a proud Civil War veteran of the 23rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry from Poland, Ohio, and he studied law at Albany Law School after the war. After passing the bar, he began his law career in Canton when Judge George Belden took him on as partner in his law firm. William had family living in Canton. His sisters Anna and Helen were both teachers from Canton City Schools, and Anna eventually became a beloved principal in the Canton education system. William's parents, William Sr. and Nancy Allison, moved to Canton, as well as his younger brother Abner, and he would call Canton home for only a short time, though. By 1869, McKinley had opened his own law office, and he was elected prosecuting attorney of Stark County as he began his ascent in politics in the Republican Party. The McKinleys were of the Methodist faith and attended the First Methodist Episcopal Church, which is now called Crossroads United Methodist Church. And this is only located a few blocks down the street from the First Presbyterian Church. William was active in his church as a Sunday school superintendent and a devoted trustee. There are many sweet stories about how the couple met and how their love story began. One is that they met at Myers Lake, where William watched with amazement as Ida, the belle of Canton, wolfed down chicken and waffles at the pavilion. There is also the sweet tale about the two seeing each other walking to their respective churches each Sunday morning and stopping to talk and laugh together. One day, William offered that it would be nice if the two could walk the same way and worship together, and Ida agreed. There are some clues to what was happening beginning the summer of 1870. In an Akron Beacon Journal article from 1903, Captain Herman Lewis Coons remembered running numerous notes between McKinley's office and the Stark County Bank. He says there, as we read, Coons says now that he does not remember how many notes he carried. He only has a vague recollection that he spent his idle time that way for the better part of one summer and that there were many notes to carry. Sometimes several a day were sent and the answers returned. Neither does he ever remember of having been largely compensated then for his efforts, for the young lawyer did not have much money to spare. He merely remembers that now and then he got a little something for his errands. There is a letter that William wrote to his brother-in-law, Andrew Jackson Duncan. A.J. Duncan was also from Poland, Ohio, and he joined the 23rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry at the same time as McKinley. A.J. married William's sister, Sarah, and the two were then living in Pittsburgh. The letter is written on letterhead of the Office of William McKinley, Jr., Attorney and Counselor at Law over First National Bank. The date is Canton, Ohio, June 28, 1870, and it's addressed to A.J. Duncan, Esquire, Pittsburgh, PA. Dear Bro, all well here? I write to have you do a little shopping for me. I want a plain, rich gold ring, 11/16 of an inch in diameter. I don't want it too broad, but neat, symmetrical, fine. If you can conveniently, you might send me 2 or 3 of different patterns. If not, make a good selection, price not to exceed $25, and have engraved in scribe letters, June 22nd, 1870. Send by express and enclose bill where I will remit at once. Send this week if convenient. Perhaps the ring had better come before it is marked. We look for Sarah and Mamie tomorrow. We are all anxious to see them. You must come out and spend a few days with us all. Yours, William McKinley, Jr. It isn't exactly known what the significance of June 22nd was, but it was clearly a very important date between these two lovebirds, since the letter was written 6 days later. Perhaps it was the day that they became engaged or they pledged their love to one another. Regardless, in 7 months, a wedding was about to take place. As the news spread, many Cantonians were abuzz with the excitement of the dashing couple's upcoming wedding. In a repository article, the newspaper reported the audience room of the new stone Presbyterian Church being nearly finished, the lady members resolved a coup of weeks since to have it ready in time for the wedding of Major McKinley and Miss Ida Saxton. Wedding invitations were mailed out in December, announcing the date as Wednesday evening, January 25th at 7:30 p.m. William sent out a personal invitation to his mentor and former commander of the 23rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry, General Rutherford B. Hayes, and his wife, Lucy. By 1870, Hayes was in his second term as governor of Ohio. On the same letterhead as before, this time dated December 12, 1870, William wrote, "My dear General and Mrs. Hayes, I have a mind to get married. Time 24th or 25th of next month. Place Canton. It is now settled that Miss Saxton and I will write our fortunes at the above time and place. I, of course, am happy and want my friends to know it, and therefore hasten to tell you. Away down at camp opposite Charleston, in that scolding widow's house, I promised Mrs. Hayes I would give her long notice of my marriage, and she in turn promised she would be present, and the general, if not in direct terms, by his silence consented to the arrangement, thereby agreeing he would be present. I have performed my part of the agreement, and I do hope you will find it convenient to perform yours. I think I am doing a good thing. Miss S is everything I could hope for. She is good, etc. Let me hear from you. Remember me to Russ and the other boys. Yours sincerely, William McKinley, Jr." Unfortunately, the Hayeses could not attend the wedding in Canton. 2 weeks after their wedding, Lucy gave birth to their son, Scott Russell Hayes, on February 8, 1871, in Columbus, Ohio. Ida continued to work at her father's bank, and wedding plans were underway. There are no existing letters Ida wrote to others of her own preparations and expectations for the day. But we know that Ida chose 2 bridesmaids, and Sister Mary was an obvious choice. Mary and Ida Saxton would always be close their entire lives. Amelia Bacchius was the other bridesmaid. She and Ida had been friends since childhood. Amelia and her father were touring Europe at the same time as the Saxton sisters, and they all took rooms together next to one another in London. Mary wrote her parents telling them she fell asleep listening to Amelia and Ida talk deep into the night. Though Ida's wedding gown no longer exists, there were eyewitnesses who described it as white satin enlaced with white pearls. Mary wore a gown in a shade of pink, and Amelia wore a gown described as the color of corn. William also had 2 groomsmen. His younger brother, Abner, had recently moved to Canton and was a new partner in his brother's law office. and William McKinley Osborne, William's cousin, served as the best man. Osborne and McKinley joined the 23rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry in Poland together. And then in 1874, Osborne would become mayor of Youngstown. There were 4 ushers for the wedding, 2 of which had special connections with the bridesmaids. Usher Morgan Huntington would marry Miss Amelia Bacchius the following year on May 22nd, 1872. Usher Marshall Barber and Miss Mary Saxton would be married 2 years later on August 20th, 1873, also at the First Presbyterian Church. The other 2 ushers were Robert D. Coon, who married Judge George Belden's daughter, Mary Alice, in 1873, and John M. John M. Faber, who was a Saxton family friend, and he had been the sole male escort on Ida's sole grand tour of Europe. As January 5th neared, Canton was abuzz with excitement during the cold winter days at the beginning of 1871. The special event would be the first time anyone would enter inside the new stone church, and it would be lit with candlelight for the evening nuptials. Long before the ceremony began at 7:30, people started entering the church. Soon, all 700 seats were filled, and late arrivals found a standing room only filled sanctuary. Professor Fisty graciously entertained the multitudes with the first music ever played inside the sanctuary by the pipe organ. Family members began to arrive and take their seats. This is Ida's brother George, and he was in attendance, as well as so many of the local Saxton and Canton relatives on the bride's side. William's family came too. His mother Nancy, sisters Anna and Helen McKinley, as well as his brother David, were in attendance. William's father was not able to attend. He was working in Caseville, Michigan, and sent his regrets. The time had arrived for the ceremony, and all eyes turned to watch James Saxton escort his daughter Ida down the left side aisle. They were followed by Mary Saxton and Abner McKinley. On the right side aisle, William McKinley led Catherine Saxton, Ida's mother, toward the pulpit and helped her to her seat. William Osborne and Amelia Bacchius followed behind them. The 4 ushers trailed behind. The parties met at the front and went to their stations. The bride and groom met in the center, and the bridesmaids and groomsmen on their respective sides formed a half circle. The 2 ministers, Dr. Andrew Jackson Ensley from the First Methodist Church and Reverend Ebenezer Buckingham from the First Presbyterian Church, performed the ceremony. Reverend Buckingham, who was prone to forgetfulness, almost didn't make it on time. A messenger was sent to fetch Reverend Coons across the street at Trinity Lutheran Church, but in the nick of time, Reverend Buckingham made it. However, he forgot to bring his white gloves, which were a present from the wedding party. Instead, he wore his old black gloves that he always used for weddings and funerals. The repository reported that a reception was held at James Saxton's residence afterwards for personal friends and family. The newspaper account did not define exactly where this residence was, because everyone in town knew that the Saxton homestead was under construction. This house, now known as the Saxton McKinley House at the National First Ladies Historic Site, was under construction. The 3rd floor and mansard roof and the wraparound porch were being added and built on at the time, and the Saxtons were temporarily living across the street in what came to be known as the Saxton Block. A group of well-wishers accompanied the newlyweds to the train station, where they caught the 10 o'clock train for the East Coast for a 3-week honeymoon. The entire wedding ceremony was captured memorably by the weekly repository newspaper 2 days later on Friday, January 23rd, 1871. This section is a fitting in to the beginning of William and Ida McKinley's extraordinary life together. At the conclusion of the ceremony, the crowd waited respectfully until the newly made husband and wife and their companions passed out. Then tongues were loosed and the dumb spake, and gossip became supreme. And all agreed that nothing could have been more gracefully performed than the first act in the life drama upon which the gallant major and his young and beautiful wife have just entered. This is an early happy Valentine's Day present to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you for a reenactment and celebration on June 4th of this year. And that's the end of my. Do we have any questions or?
We do, and I want to apologize to everyone because I realized that I had the chat function turned off. So a few people have entered questions into the Q&A, but again, I want to encourage people, if you have questions, there are some good ones here though. So Mrs. McKinley loved diamonds. We know that.
Yes.
There's a question about who inherited those diamonds, and are any of them currently on view anywhere?
Yes. We have here at our site, we have a diamond ring that Ida McKinley once wore that came down through the family and was given to the National First Ladies Library. And it's just a beautiful, big, huge diamond. We also, if you go to the McKinley Museum, you'll see her tiara that was also in the family. And that's just encrusted with diamonds. And then we just recently received a flag pin, and it has, I think, more diamonds than anything else, but it also has rubies and sapphires to form the flag. So yes, it's very true. She did love diamonds, and they're around still.
At the beginning of your talk, I think you mentioned an egg caster, and there was a question about what that was.
What an egg caster is? Mm-hmm. Good question. I think it's like a thing that you presented, that you put eggs on. It sounds like it's really fancy though. I always thought they were just kind of a wire thing, but it must have been a beautiful, porcelain one or something. It was something you displayed eggs on.
Did the couple take a honeymoon, and where? And then also, did Ida work after the wedding, after the marriage?
No, she didn't. Once you became a wife, even Ida, who was pretty advanced in her thinking, she became a wife at that point. As a matter of fact, on December 25th of 1871, they started married, and they end the year. She gives birth on Christmas Day to their first daughter, Katie. So no, she didn't go back to work. And what was the second part of that? Oh, they went on a honeymoon. They went for 3 weeks to the East Coast, and no one really knows that I can find out exactly where they went, but they went for about 3 weeks. Abner McKinley, as I said, he was had just come to town, and I think he was new to the law office with McKinley. So I think he was minding the store while McKinley went on his honeymoon, but he wanted to get back. He was anxious to get back to work.
There was a question about the reception. So the home was under construction.
Yes.
So was there no reception in Canton?
There was a reception, definitely, for friends and family. Now, I've read books that say that there were 300 people that came for the reception. And there were people that talked about going to it and following them to the train station. But that was a big clue for us when we began our research. Was we knew that the Saxton house, the Saxton McKinley house, it's a nice size house, but it couldn't hold 300 people in the ballroom. And we've since learned that that was because there was a woman who was remembering the wedding, and she was talking about how it was held across the street at a place they were living there.
Okay. Follow-up question for that is, as far as the Saxton McKinley house and the ballroom goes, what kinds of parties were held in that space?
Good question. We're just really not sure. What we know is that if you come to visit and you've been up there, you know that that's where William McKinley's law office was located. And when you're up there, you'll realize there aren't tall ceilings. It's not what you would consider a Victorian ballroom. So what our research has found is that Ida and William actually lived there whenever they were in Canton. They were very transient type people. They lived from in house as his career took off in politics. So when he was governor, they were living in Columbus. They lived in Washington, D.C. while he was a congressman. And then whenever they were in Canton, they were living on the third floor of the Saxton house with Mary and Marshall Barber and their 7 children.
Someone is asking if the McKinleys played any musical instruments?
Yes, Ida played the piano, and she played it very well from what I've read. And I think Mary also played the piano, her sister. That's all that I've read that she did, but she played the piano and she loved music too.
We have some more general questions about Ida. So about Ida becoming ill, and when did that happen? And there's also a follow-up to that. After McKinley was assassinated, she appeared to recover. So can you speak a little bit for those who don't know about Ida's illness,
sure.
when that took place and how it played out in her life?
Ida was a very active, totally living her life very happily, and gave birth to Katie, as I said, on Christmas Day in 1871. And then she became pregnant with another child. And this was a difficult pregnancy. And there's a book about the health of the first ladies. And I think that doctor really kinds of explains it. That we don't know. We know that she had issues with this pregnancy. It was a difficult pregnancy. He suspects that it was a preeclampsia, something like that today would have been very easily, she would have gotten medical treatment for. But the baby, it caused a lot of problems for Ida during the pregnancy, obviously. And then the baby, who was named Ida, she was born very, very sickly, and she died at 4 months old. And at the same time, Ida, for whatever reason, probably the blood pressure and all that was caused because of her problems with the complications in the pregnancy, she was left with epilepsy. And that is kind of the beginning of what people called as invalid. Of course, they didn't know a lot about epilepsy at the time. There was no treatment for it. We don't even really know. It seems like she had times when she was totally fine. She'd go for long periods of time without an episode. And then for whatever reason, she'd have more. It's really hard to tell. We know that McKinley was very concerned. He loved her dearly. It was truly a love story. And he was always worried about her, wanting to help her. But there were no really medications they knew to use other than bromides. And so she was treated kind of off and on with that. But again, it wasn't very scientifically done. And of course, you don't really talk about women's health in the Victorian age. And so she goes to the White House, and that's unfortunately where she's given all these doctors, and they want to help her, right? But they actually make her sicker. And while she's in the White House, she becomes quite ill from over medication. So then once the assassination happens, Ida is, because everyone is so afraid that she'll have an epileptic episode, she is kept away from the public. And that's very sad to read about. She was actually never there. She might be upstairs. She would listen to services and things, but everyone was so worried that she would have an episode that they kept her from participating publicly. She came back here to Canton, and she lived another 6 years till 1907. And we don't have any record of her having epileptic episodes, whether that's because the stress was gone or whether, she's not in the public view anymore. She's just a citizen, and she's living in her house, and she has help. And so no one records any more episodes. She only goes out. She goes out and she does things within those 6 years, but no one really sees her and writes about any epileptic episodes. So we really don't know.
We have one more general First Lady question, and then another wedding related question. What was Ida's platform as First Lady?
Oh my. I would say in her way, she was, she was she'd been taught by Betsy Mix Cowles. She was pro-suffrage. She was very much about she actually sent flowers to Susan B. Anthony, and she carried them out. That's pretty bold for a First Lady to do, especially, in the late 1800s. Also, her platform, the Spanish-American War had happened. So the new territories of the Philippines and that are going on. And Ida is very concerned that about the children, and that they are getting proper education and all that goes along with that education in that umbrella. So she's very, but it's all behind the scenes that she's doing all this. I should add, she also made a doll that was sold in a suffrage bazaar in New York that was auctioned off. So that's pretty neat too.
Back to the wedding. Do you know anything about the wedding parties? Flowers? Did they carry flowers?
Good question. No, I haven't found that out. What's so frustrating about the repository article, which goes into quite detail about so many things. He just kind of goes, yeah, they were wearing dresses and it was beautiful. He doesn't give you any idea of what the flowers were. Sarah Gage, who is on our staff here, she's doing a lot of research on Victorian weddings of the time. So when we have an exhibit that will be going on during this celebration, we hope to find out more about that, but we're still trying to dig around, and we may just have to give you what was the Victorian standard for a wealthy white woman, which definitely Ida was.
How did the McKinley wedding, how did Ida's wedding compare to Mary's wedding? Was there similar newspaper coverage? Have you found out?
That's such a good question. Not that I know of. And that's a really good question. I would like to know that. Of course, Mary and Marshall lived here in Canton all this time and raised 7 children here, and were very, very involved in the community of Canton itself. So that's a really good question. I do know that they were married in the First Presbyterian Church.
Okay, so this is going to be our final question. I think it's a good one to wrap up with. Someone is asking what kind of help is still needed to pull off the McKinley wedding reenactment in June. Give us more feedback or any way people can participate.
Sure, reach out to us here, here at the First Ladies. Also, you can reach out to the First Presbyterian Church. There's various groups doing different things. Visit Canton is involved. I'm so excited. Just reach out and see if you need some help.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle, and thank
You're
you
welcome
for joining us today.
Yes, thank you.
I encourage you to come to the National First Ladies Historic Site or join us here virtually for future programs. Next week, we have our film series, which you can register for on Eventbrite. And we're really excited to talk about Florence Harding for next month's Legacy Lecture. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. And we will look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.